Hi friends, today I would like to address you on one of the most significant and important topic of Civil Procedure Code section 10 of the CPC, which says about the res sub judice or stay of the proceeding. Sub judice means when the subject matter is pending for the competent court. That is the literal meaning of the word. Yesterday I have addressed you regarding section 11 of the CPC, which says that res judicata, and the two concepts res judicata and res sub judice are so much important that those lawyers who are practicing at the civil side must know these two concepts. Therefore, all the ingredients in the component of section 11 of the CPC, that is res judicata, are also exactly applicable to the concept of the res sub judice, except only one, that is, in case of the res judicata, the suit has been decided by the former court, the former suit has been decided by the competent court, whereas in case of res sub judice, the suit in the former court as well as in the present court, that is subsequent court, is pending before the court. Means in case of res judicata, the former court has adjudicated upon the issues and come to the finality and finally has decided the case, whereas in case of res sub judice, the former suit is still pending before the earlier court or former court. If you see the wording of the two sections, that is section 11 and 10 of the CPC, which says that you will have only basic difference, only a few difference or thin line of difference is that between these two, that the res judicata, in case of res judicata, the matter has already been decided by the former court, whereas in case of this res sub judice, the matter is pending. I would like to draw your attention towards the wording of the legislature, because the beginning of section 11 says that no court shall try. The wording of the res judicata is no court shall try suit or issue in which the matter has been directly and substantially in issue in a former suit between the same parties and has been heard and finally decided by the competent court. Has been heard and finally decided by the competent court. And no court shall try. I'm putting emphasis on this word try. No court shall try. Whereas in case of section 10 of the CPC, what is the wording? Now see, no court shall proceed. No court shall proceed. Not try. It is stated that no court shall proceed with the trial of any suit in which the matter is issue is also directly and substantially in issue in the previously instituted suit between the same parties, where such a suit is pending in the same court or any other court having jurisdiction to grant the relief claimed. It means in case of res sub judice, the matter in the former court is still pending, it has not been decided, because nowhere in section 10 it is stated that the earlier court has decided the case or heard the matter. Therefore, that is the only basic difference between these two, and the remaining ingredients of the sections are same. However, apart from this, I'm also going to explain you the many aspects related to this concept. As we know, being a lawyer, that there are a number of kinds of civil suit which can be filed in the court of law, like suit for title, suit for possession, suit for claiming title based on the adverse possession, suit for partition, suit for compensation, suit for injunction, etc., etc. Therefore, we have to know many things, basic concepts, that because in both the cases, res judicata and res sub judice, it is stated that the issue involved or pending in the cases must be identical. And similar, because the issues are same. For example, Mr. X person has filed a civil suit in respect of a title of the property. He's claiming X plot and he's claiming that he's owner of the property and he filed a case against the B. Thereafter, the suit is related to the property that plot only. Similarly, the case has been decided in case of the res judicata. Therefore, the same party should not file the case, or either party should not file the case against the same parties before the same court or any other court having jurisdiction claiming the same relief. Therefore, parties are not allowed to come once again. They are not allowed to reopen the subject. That is provided in the res judicata. Whereas in case of res sub judice, the issue is already pending before the court. Now take an example. See, Mr. A and B. Mr. A has filed the suit claiming title of the property, and B, his brother, they are claiming the ancestral property. Now, the suit has been filed by A, and yet B, defendant, has not received any summons from the court. Till that time, because there was a dispute between these two brothers, till that time B also thought that he should also file the case. Therefore, he was not aware of the fact that his brother A has filed the case against him. So probably he will file the case before the same court. Means Mr. B will file the case before the same court claiming the same relief. Assume that Mr. B has also filed the case claiming title in respect of the same property before the same court. Because he was not knowing that his brother has already filed the case before few days or some days, as he has not received the summons yet. Now, see the situation. Mr. B is also claiming the property, same property, as based on the ownership. Means he is claiming the ownership as a legal heirs, and Mr. A is also claiming the same property as the owner of the property. So two different suits claiming the same reliefs have been filed by two different persons before the same court related to the same property. Therefore, the issue is identical. Their prayers are same, property is same. Therefore, the subject matter is also same. Hence, it becomes res sub judice. Why? Because res sub judice means the parties of the suits are same. They are litigating under the same title. They are claiming the same subject matter. Here, the same property they are claiming. And the earlier court has not decided the case. The finality, there is no finality to the earlier case or formerly suit, that is also pending. Therefore, now the subsequent suit must be stayed by the court where it is pending, because it is the mandatory directions of the legislature to the court that the second court or the court where this subsequent suit is filed should stop the trial of the case, because the wording is used, no court shall proceed with the trial of the suit. Therefore, it is the duty, mandatory duty casted on the court subsequent to stop the trial, not to conduct the trial of the second case or second suit, because law says such. Therefore, these provisions have to be respected and implemented. Sorry. Now, another example I would like to give. So, for example, Mr. A and B are the brothers, and their property is located at the border of two districts. Therefore, two courts will have concurrent jurisdiction over the same property. Then, possibility is that for then Mr. A brother has filed the suit in one district, and possibility is that if the fact is not known to B brother B, then he will file at the another district. So the two cases could be filed at two different courts. That is also possible, because why? I have already discussed with you regarding the concurrent jurisdiction, this concept, while discussing the concept of jurisdiction under the CPC. Therefore, under the res sub judice or even res judicata, the subsequent case can be filed before the same court, or it can be filed before a court in India, which is also having a jurisdiction. So the second court is also having a jurisdiction, that is called concurrent jurisdiction. So it normally it happens due to the lack of with unaware of the fact, because Mr. B is not knowing that his brother has filed the case at X district. Therefore, he has filed a case claiming the same property, claiming the title of the property being a legal heirs at another district. Or he may file the case before the same court where the brother has filed the former suit. So possibility is that the to the same court or cases can be filed at two different courts. Now what res sub judice says that the subsequent court must prevent from proceeding with the trial, and the first court is not bound to stop the proceeding, and only it is duty of the subsequent court to stop the trial. Stop the trial means court cannot proceed with the trial. Now, how to know that which case has been filed first? Obviously, the date of filing, that can be known from the date of filing. For example, if Mr. A brother, has filed a case against his brother B on 1st January, and without knowing this fact, Mr. B brother has filed the case on 3rd of January before the same court or any other court in India having jurisdiction. Then second court is the court because B has filed the case subsequently. Therefore, the court where B has filed the case should stop and should not proceed with the trial of the case. And I also discussed to you while discussing the concept of res judicata, the court, the definition of the court is the court having jurisdiction. Even if the court is established out of India, however, with the authority of the central government of India, then it is Indian court. Though the court is established outside India, like Australia or America, then the court is coming within the definition of Indian court because it is established by the authority of Indian government or central government of India. Hence, the subsequent court must prevent. I would like to give another example. If Mr. A is staying in India and his brother is staying in America, and there is also a court in America which has been established upon the authority of the central government of India, then a dispute was going on between these two brothers on telephone, suppose, and Mr. A has filed the case in India, whereas immediately on the next day or some after few days, Mr. B has filed the case in a court at America, the court which has been established upon the authority of the central government of India. Then it becomes res sub judice because why? The earlier former suit is pending, still pending in the court. Now, we know that the ingredients and components of both the res judicata and res sub judice are same, except only one, that is the suit in the res judicata is already decided, whereas the suit is pending, former suit is pending in res sub judice. This is the only difference. Now, there are two case laws which I would like to discuss with you. For example, I would like to give the same example. Mr. A and B, both are brothers. Mr. A has filed the case in X court and Mr. B has filed the case in another court, another district. Thereafter, upon receipt of the summons to the defendant by the court, defendant will come to know that the case has been filed by the plaintiff. Now, what CPC says that once the defendant receives the summons, from the date of receipt of summons, the written statement has to be filed within the span of 30 days. However, the duration may extend up to 90 days with the permission of the court for reasons to be recorded. Then once they get the summons, they will come to know that the suit has been filed by their brother, and they will come to know, or shockingly, yes, he's filed the case related to the same property, claiming the same relief, but in the, either in the same court or in the different court. Then the defendant will appear, first plaintiff in the former suit will appear in the subsequent court, and he will say, he will take a ground being a defendant that already I have filed the same case related to the same property, subject matter is same against my brother and the property is same, an earlier case is pending. Therefore, this he will give an application or whatever notice of motion to stop the proceeding of the subsequent court. Obviously, by virtue of the provision of res subjudice, the second court has to stop the proceedings or trial of the subsequent court. However, in case of Guru Prasad versus Vijay Kumar in 1984, Guru Prasad versus Vijay Kumar in 1984, Honorable Court has held that second subsequent suit filed by the defendant of the first case, that subsequent case has been filed by the defendant of the first case, he made an application that the former suit should be tried together and both matter should be clubbed together. However, the plaintiff in the first suit argued that Lordship already it is pending and I have already filed the suit that is pending before the that this court should stop. However, the Honorable said that clubbing the matters two together, consolidation of the matters of consolidation of the two civil suits at one place does not or would not hinder in any way the policy behind the doctrine of res subjudice. It does not affect the concept of principle does not attack the concept of res subjudice, and it is not violation of the principle of res subjudice. Then the two matters can be clubbed together. However, what is important is that this second court must not conduct the trial. No court shall proceed with the trial. Therefore, it is duty of the second court or second presiding officer before whom the subsequent suit is filed to stop the proceeding to conduct the trial. However, consolidation of the two cases by order is allowed, and that will not be violation of the principle of res subjudice. That is stated in the Guru Prasad versus Vinay Kumar case. Now, another interesting case which I would like to discuss with you, in Sonaji Kapuchand versus Pannaji Devchand. Sonaji Kapuchand versus Pannaji Devchand, the Honorable Court held that if the subsequent court passes the interlocutory orders or interim orders, then it will not be violation of the, because why? The interim orders or interlocutory orders can be passed when the suit is pending, though the trial has not been completed. So meanwhile, taking into urgency of the matter to grant the justice to the party, the interlocutory orders can be passed by the court. Therefore, even if the subsequent court passes interim orders in the subsequent suit, then it will not be violation of the principle of res subjudice, and second court can be justified in passing the interlocutory orders. What kind of interlocutory orders can be passed? That injunction over the property can be granted, that is interim. Commissioner can be appointed by the court, that is also interim order or interlocutory order. Receiver can also be appointed by the order, that is interim order. And attachment of the property can also be awarded. So these are the interim orders, which interlocutory order which can be passed by the subsequent court, and subsequent court is not stopped or precluded from passing the interlocutory orders. What is the objectionable or not allowed is that the second court cannot conduct the trial of these for a subsequent suit. However, interim orders can be passed by the subsequent court. That is held in Senaji Kapuchand versus Pannaji Devchand. Once again, I am reiterating. Now, another question arises: what is the test to understand whether the principle of res subjudice is applicable or not? The test is same. If the former court, because the former suit is also pending before the former court, if the former court decides the case finally, for example, assume it, then such a final order, if Former court has passed the order in former suit. If such a order, if passed, whether it operates as a res judicata, whether it operates as explained in section 11, then if it operates as a res judicata, then definitely it is res sub judice. Therefore, the principle of res sub judice is applicable. For example, if the former suit has been filed by the party claiming title of the property, whereas Mr. B, defendant in the first suit, has filed another suit before the another court claiming compensation from Mr. A, then it cannot be said that the subject matter is same, because subject matters are different. A is claiming title in respect of the property, whereas B is claiming compensation. Then neither it can become res judicata nor it can become res sub judice. So the test to identify, to check whether the principle of res sub judice is applicable or not, the test is same which is applicable in case of the res judicata, that the former court, if decides the case finally, and if such a final order is passed, whether such a final order operates judicata to the subsequent court or in subsequent suit. If yes, answer is yes, then it is principle of res sub judice is applicable. If answer is no, then no res sub judice, no principle of res. So this is very much important, as we have discussed two case laws, that the consolidation of the cases does not hinder or attack the principle of res sub judice, as well as passing of the interlocutory orders, many interlocutory orders by the subsequent court does not attack the principle of res sub judice, and that is also allowed. The only thing which is objectionable or not allowed or cannot be done is only the subsequent court cannot conduct the trial, proceed the trial, and even without conducting the trial, if case can be heard, any order can be passed, then that is allowed, that can be done, and there won't be violation of the res sub judice principle. The same ingredients are also applicable in case of res sub judice, which are also applicable in case of res judicata, as there are two suits between the same parties, the parties are same, the suits are same, and the title, they are the parties are litigating under their own name or through their representative, and they are claiming the same relief, same prayers, because the subject matter is same in both the cases, and earlier court is also competent one, and this court is also competent one, and only difference is that in case of res judicata, the former suit has been decided, adjudicated upon by the first court, whereas in case of res sub judice, or to apply the principle of res sub judice, the earlier former suit must be pending before the first court, must be pending. If it is decided, then it becomes res judicata. Only that is the difference. And the subject matter must be directly and substantially in issue. That is also most important. If the Mr. A is claiming suit for title in respect of plot number 10, and Mr. B is also claiming suit for title in respect of the same plot before the same court or before the other courts, then it becomes, because if the court has got the jurisdiction or competency, then only the principle, these two principles will be applicable, otherwise not. As in case of res judicata also, if the earlier court which has decided the case, if the court does not have jurisdiction, then subsequent court case or suit pending before the subsequent court cannot become a res judicata, because the earlier court was not having jurisdiction. Likewise, in case of this res sub judice also, the former court, if does not have jurisdiction or does not have authority to conduct the trial, then res sub judice, this concept will not be applicable. To attract the concept of both the res judicata and res sub judice, the both court must have jurisdiction, the concurrent jurisdiction, that normally it is concurrent jurisdiction only. And the purpose behind this section 10 is to avoid the conflicting decisions, because suppose two different courts are there, parties are same, subject matter is same, and they are litigating in respect of the same, they are claiming the same relief, If the two courts are allowed to pass the order to conduct the trial, then there will be conflicting orders. Therefore, to avoid the conflicting orders, because both the courts cannot be allowed to conduct the case, same case, similar case simultaneously. Therefore, to avoid the conflict of the would be conflict of the two orders to be passed by the two courts, this principle is capsulized or embodied in section 10 of the CPC. Hope that I have covered this. If anybody wants to ask the question, can put the question, can type the question in inbox. Once I'll go through that, I will try my best to give the answer of the same. And one more thing I would like to add here, the subject matter or question involved may be directly and substantially an issue. Then subject matter may involve question of law or question of fact or question of mixed fact and law. I would like to give example of these three. What is question of fact? Fact, the word has already been defined in Indian Evidence Act. Fact, I'm not going into the definitions, anything or that the definition is there, anything or which can be perceived by the senses, etc. Like a question of fact means, for example, if there is a dispute between Mr. A and Y, A and B, two brothers, that Mr. A says that there is an agreement entered into by there is agreement between A and B. He is saying that, whereas Mr. B is saying that there is no such agreement in respect of particular property. Now, question arises whether there is an agreement or any agreement is executed between A and B in respect of the particular property. That is purely a question of fact only. Question of fact only, because there is agreement between these two parties or not. Question of fact. Now, question of law, whether under such agreement Mr. A is entitled to get the title in respect of the property. That is question of law. Means Mr. A is entitled to get the ownership of the property. That is question of law, whether he is entitled or not according to law. Now, the mixed question of law and mixed question of fact is whether there is an agreement between A and B, and if so, then whether A is entitled to claim the ownership in respect of the property. That is mixed question of law and fact. So the subject matter may involve question of law, question of fact, or mixed question of law and fact. However, in both the cases, res judicata and res judice, the subject matter must be same and the question must be directly and substantially in issue. Hope that I have covered all things and you have enjoyed my lecture. Thanks again to you as you are listening to me and motivating me to deliver many lectures. Thank you.